This chapter is about sonnet, a form of poetry. Sonnet is basically a love poem of 14 lines invented to express intense passions for lady love. This form of poetry originated at the court of the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, Sicily in 13th century. The 13th century poet Giacomo da Lentini is credited with the sonnet's invention. The term sonnet is derived from the Italian word sonetto, that means a little poem or a little song. Another important poet of the age was Dante Alighieri, the 13th century Italian poet who wrote several sonnets for his beloved Beatrice. But the most famous early sonneteer was Francisco Petrarca, popularly known as Petrarch, in early half of the 14th century. He used sonnets to express his love for his beloved Laura. Petrarch was an Italian scholar and poet during the early Italian Renaissance period. Petrarch is traditionally called the father of humanism and considered by many to be the father of Renaissance. Petrarchan sonnet is a sonnet form not developed by Petrarch himself but by Sicilian school. The original Italian sonnet form divides the poem's 14 lines into two parts. The first part being an octave, 8 lines stanza, and the second being a sestet, 6 lines stanza. Octave was further divided into two quatrains, stanza of 4 lines, and the sestet was divided into tercets. Tercet is a stanza of 3 lines. The rhyme scheme for the octave is typically ABBA, ABBA. The sestet is more flexible. Petrarch typically used CDE, CDE or CDC, DCD for the sestet. The octave in Italian sonnet describes a problem or question, followed by a sestet which proposes a resolution. Typically, the 9th line initiates what is called the turn or volta, which signals the move from proposition to resolution. Now let's discuss the development of sonnet form of poetry in English language. Sir Thomas Pitt in the first half of the 16th century was the first poet to introduce sonnets into English literature. Sir Thomas Pitt was an English politician, ambassador and a lyric poet. He adapted the Italian form of sonnet for his purpose. He took subject matter from Petrarch's sonnets, but his rhyme schemes are significantly different. Petrarch's sonnets consist of an octave rhyming ABBA, ABBA, followed by a sestet with various rhyme schemes. Sir Thomas Pitt employs the Petrarchan octave, but his most common sestet scheme is CDD, CEE. One more contemporary poet of Sir Thomas Pitt, who contributed a lot to this art of sonnet writing, was Henry Hobart, Earl of Surrey. He was an English nobleman, politician and poet. Earl of Surrey experimented and contributed a new structure to sonnets. This new structure gave a new name to sonnets, English sonnets. Earl of Surrey divided his sonnets into 3 quatrains and one concluding rhyming couplet. His rhyming scheme was ABAB, CDCD, EFEF, GG. Here one point is to be noted that in English, both the English that is Shakespearean sonnets later on, and the Italian Petrarchan sonnet. Both are traditionally written in iambic pentameter. When English sonnets were introduced by Thomas Wade in the early 16th century, his sonnets and those of his contemporary the Earl of Surrey were chiefly translations from the Italian poet Petrarch. Both these poets' sonnets were first published in Richard Tottle's Songs and Sonnets, better known as Tottle's Miscellany, in 1557. Then there came the golden period of English literature under the reign of Queen Elizabeth from 1558, and its sonnet form of poetry appealed the heart of many poets. There was Sir Philip Sidney, Elizabethan English poet, courtier, scholar and soldier, who is remembered as one of the most prominent figures of the Elizabethan age. He wrote his sonnet sequence in 1580s, Astrophel and Stella, that was published around 1591. It contained 108 sonnets and 11 songs. Sidney also adopts the Petrarchan rhyming scheme. In this sequence, Sidney expressed his love for his beloved Penelope Devereux. Then there was Edmund Spenser, Elizabethan best poet known for the Fairy Queen. Fairy Queen is an epic poem and fantastical allegory celebrating the Tudor dynasty and Elizabeth I. Edmund Spenser wrote a sonnet sequence, Amoretti, that was published in 1595. This sonnet sequence describes his courtship and eventual marriage to Elizabeth Boyle. The volume included the sequence of 89 sonnets. Spenser adapted the English structure of sonnet with a distinct rhyming scheme. His rhyme scheme was AB, BC, BC, CD, CD, EE. Then there comes William Shakespeare, one of the greatest dramatists and poets of Elizabethan age. He wrote 154 sonnets on various themes that were published altogether in a quarto in 1609 by Thomas Thorpe. However, there are 6 additional sonnets that Shakespeare wrote and included in the plays like Romeo and Juliet, Henry V and Love's Labour's Lost, but we count as 154 more popularly. Shakespeare adopted the English form and rhyming scheme of Earl of Surrey's sonnets and made it so popular that English form of sonnets was called more popularly as Shakespearean sonnets. The rhyming scheme of Shakespearean sonnets was ABAB, CDCD, EFEF, GG. This is the same rhyming pattern that was initiated by Earl of Surrey. Now, if we look at how Shakespeare's sonnets differ from his predecessors and contemporaries, we'll notice that instead of expressing worshipful love for an almost goddess-like yet unobtainable female love object, as Petrarch, Dante and Philip Sidney had done, Shakespeare introduces a young man. He also introduces the dark lady, who is no goddess. Shakespeare explores themes such as lust, homoeroticism, misogyny, infidelity and acrimony in ways that may challenge but which also open new terrain for the sonnet form. There were so many other poets worth mentioning who wrote their sonnet sequences during Elizabethan period. If I name a few, there was Samuel Daniel. He wrote the sonnet sequence Delia that was published in 1592. It is a collection of 50 sonnets. Michael Drayton, he wrote the sonnet sequence titled Idea's Mirror published in 1594. It is a sequence of 64 sonnets dedicated to female. Later, Michael Drayton reworked on this sequence and published with another title, Idea, in 1619. In this sequence, there were 73 sonnets in total. This is all about this lecture. In the next lecture, I will deal with Shakespearean sonnet in detail.